Dallas Cowboys are currently 5-5, 10th place in the NFC. But the outlook going into next season, in my opinion, is sky high. And it all has to do with Dak Prescott. This guy currently is playing at an MVP level. The Cowboys and Jerry Jones said last year that the Cowboys were going to go quote unquote all in. And it seems like they postponed that until this season before trading Micah Parsons. I think looking back at it now, the George Pickens trade was an absolute fleece. Dak has two elite weapons in Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. The run game looks phenomenal behind Javonte Williams and that Cowboys offensive line. Tyler Booker hasn't had the best rookie season, but I think he's shown a good amount of promise as far as replacing Zach Martin. It doesn't look like it's going to be a 1-to-1, but I do think he can eventually reach that Pro Bowl, maybe all pro level. So the Cowboys have a lot of promising futures on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, let's talk about that first before we get into the raw numbers of the Cowboys. Trading away Micah Parsons probably was a mistake, but at the same time, it opened up a ton of room for the Cowboys to go out and grab more defensive players. And they've done that so far. Kenny Clark was in the trade for the Cowboys, and then later on in this season, they go at the trade deadline and grab Quinnen Williams. I think that is a pretty solid pickup. Now, Quinnen Williams has yet to play at that second or third year all-pro type level that he was playing with the Jets, but some of that can be contributed to a lack of depth on the Jets' defensive line now, Robert Saleh being gone, and this Jets' defensive scheme changing a little bit under Aaron Glenn. But I digress. I do think the Cowboys have made some underrated moves so far at least in the season. So looking at the offseason, I think it's time for the Cowboys to absolutely go all in on Dak Prescott. So let's take a look at some of these numbers here. Dak in his entire career is 14th all-time in yards per game. He's 80, 51-1 as a starter. He has that one tie this year against the Packers. And he's 35-32 on the road. So that's not the best road record, but we've seen the Cowboys' ability to win the NFC East multiple times throughout Dak's career and get close to that 1 or 2 seed. If they can get to that number 1 seed, I absolutely think the Cowboys can run the table and make it to a Super Bowl. I am not somebody that is a Cowboys fan. I'm not going to try to tell you, well, this year is the year for Dallas or next year is going to be the one that they get to the Super Bowl. What I am saying is Dak Prescott is a more than capable quarterback of winning football games consistently, and he's not incapable of winning games on the road. Now, playoff record-wise, doesn't look great, but once again, if you give the Cowboys more opportunities to play playoff games at home, I think that record will increase substantially. We all remember the Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the NFC divisional matchup. That was a pretty ugly one at home. I don't think that would happen again if we saw that matchup this season. Like I said, that was a couple of years ago. Dak and the Cowboys offensively have proven tenfold, quite honestly, and it's all thanks to this passing game. The run game has been very substantial. It keeps defenses stacked inside. You cannot put 5 DBs out there with a couple light linebackers. You've got to at least put 6 in the box, maybe even 7. So with that being said, the Cowboys run kind of a Seattle Seahawks style offense where they don't run as heavy. They don't run 2 tight ends as much as the Seahawks do, but there's a good amount of play action, the establishment of the run game, and then passing actually happens more than running the football, which is always a plus sign when you think about quarterback play. Dak in his entire career has thrown 234 touchdowns and 88 interceptions. That's about a 2.75 touchdown to interception ratio. Yeah, I remember a couple seasons ago when he led the league in interceptions, but look at the weapons around him versus look at the weapons with him now. Jake Ferguson has been a very usable tool for this Cowboys offense. I am very confident in the Cowboys' ability to go and win. But let's go ahead and talk about what Jerry Jones has done. He is surrounding Dak Prescott with capable players, and he's spreading out some of the salary that Micah Parsons would have soaked up. Now, that being said, thinking about Micah Parsons, the lack of quite honestly, pressure is the major issue with this Cowboys defense. Micah Parsons is proving why he was wanting $40+ million a year as a non-quarterback. He's top 3 in the league in quarterback pressures. Offenses are literally having to game plan around him. They were doing that in Dallas. Now they're doing it in Green Bay. He dominates an entire side of the pass rush. There's not a single offensive coordinator out there going up against the Packers that doesn't think night and day before their matchup about how are they going to stop Micah Parsons. He's probably the second, maybe third best pass rusher in the league. Myles Garrett right now takes that number 1 spot wholeheartedly. A couple of other guys like Brian Burns in New York have had good seasons, but I definitely think Micah Parsons, per the usual, is up there in that conversation. That being said, I understand why they traded him. It seemed that there was a culture war going on there between Dak and Micah. It seems that Dak won. I don't know how happy a lot of people were about that, but he has been the captain of this team now for almost a decade. There are so many wins that he can be responsible, or that he is responsible for. And so I think the Cowboys had to go out and pick the number 1 most important position out there, quarterback, and a great guy in Dak Prescott. This was a good move in my opinion. Let me just continue now with what I think the Cowboys should continue to talk about. Dak Prescott this year in 2025, third as of this recording in total yards passing, second in passing touchdowns, first in quarterback rating, seventh in passer rating, and fifth in completion percentage. And this is all with the Cowboys getting an entirely new staff. Brian Schottenheimer, head coach, new offensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, the new defensive coordinator. The Cowboys defense has been atrocious. They're not setting up the Cowboys offense for success, and yet Dak Prescott continuously goes out there and puts up extremely solid numbers. Now, his interceptions are a little higher than you'd like. I think it's at 7 right now, but with the volume that he's passing, it's completely understandable. Let's continue to talk about the rest of this Cowboys team. Javonte Williams can stick around for a few more years. CeeDee Lamb has a long deal in place. George Pickens also, I believe, has a long deal in place. If not, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming. This Cowboys offensive line is relatively young and has the ability to get better, so there's a lot of room for improvement there. And then defensively is where I think a lot of things are going to have to change. Talking about the front 7, obviously Tank Lawrence, Micah Parsons, and several other defensive players that have been impact guys on this Cowboys defense over the last few years are dearly missed. They're going to have to figure out the edge rushing issue. The Cowboys, I believe, are 31st or 30th in sacks this season. That's absolutely atrocious, and you can't win a Super Bowl that way. So they're going to have to find a premium edge rusher either in the draft or in free agency. Free agency is going to be a little hard. I think the money overall is going to be pretty tied up in this offense. That is a little bit of an issue, but if you could figure out how to grab some draft capital and move up in the draft to grab a premium edge rusher like a Reuben Bain, that would be absolutely incredible for the Cowboys. Now, speaking of the defense, let's continue to talk about this secondary. The DBs on this Cowboys team, I'm not going to say the word washed because that's disrespectful, but it's clear that these Cowboys defensive backs are out of their prime. Deron Bland, who led the league in interceptions just a couple seasons ago, or maybe it was Trayvon Diggs that led the league in interceptions, or maybe it was both of them, quite honestly. Both of these guys are really high-end, risk-it defensive backs. They're going to create some absolute beautiful plays. They're very boomer bust. And now, heading into the latter part of their careers where they rely so much on their athleticism, we're getting towards the busts being far more than the booms. And so I think that's a major problem. The deeper part of this secondary, I think, is sustainable and usable going into next season. So the two places of major improvement that I would like to see for the Cowboys is edge rusher and defensive back. Keeping this Cowboys offense as intact as possible is unbelievably important. There should be tons of continuity and consistency going into next season. Now, all that being said, I think the Cowboys can make the playoffs this year. Like I said, they're 5-5-1 right now. Their ceiling with, I think, 6 games remaining is, well, I guess it's 9-8, huh? Well, no, it's 11. It's 11-5-1. That's possible, but that's a little unrealistic. 10-6-1 is a little more realistic, but I still think that might be out of the question. I think they can make the playoffs if they play their cards right. They have a couple of easy games. The Commanders are pretty much shot for the rest of the season. The Giants are going to be folding. I don't know if Jackson Dart's going to play another game. They have to play them both on the road. And then they have the Chargers, the Vikings, and then Chiefs and Lions. If they can somehow split the Chiefs and Lions and win out the rest of their games and go 5-1, they'll finish the season 10-6-1, which in my opinion will guarantee them a playoff spot. But that's a lot to ask for of a football team. So next season is the year for the Cowboys to go all in on Dak Prescott. He has proven time and time again that he is a reliable option. People want to disrespect him and say he's not a top 10 quarterback. I'm here to tell you that he absolutely is. He's proven it over and over and over again. If the Cowboys had a better record, or if they end up going 10-6-1, I would, or maybe 11-5-1, I would have Dak Prescott in a top 3 MVP conversation. He has played phenomenal, and that was the conversation earlier this season when the Cowboys were, I believe, 2-1 or maybe 2-2, and Dak, his numbers were just out of this world. If he can continue this play and the Cowboys make the playoffs, he should absolutely be in the MVP conversation. And then last but not least, next season should be the year the Cowboys go all in on Dak and this offense. Let me know what you think of this. I'm not a Cowboys fan, so I try not to sound as delusional as possible, but let me know how off base this take is. Do we see something, or do I see something different in Dak than a lot of people don't? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.